Stop. Right now. Before you react. Before you reply. Before you let one moment steal your peace. Think about this for a second. How many times has a single comment ruined your mood? How many times has one message stayed in your head all day? How many times have you said something in anger and regretted it later? That wasn't strength. That wasn't honesty. That was loss of control. Here's the truth most people never learn. The moment you react, you give your power away. And the moment you don't, you take it back. This story is about that moment. The pause. The space. The power of not reacting. Reactions feel instant because they are. You don't schedule them. You don't plan them. You don't even notice them forming. 1 second you're fine, normal, calm, just moving through your day. And the next second something shifts inside you like a switch flipped. Could be something small. A disrespectful tone. Not even a shout. Just a certain way someone says your name. A little sarcasm. A little dismissal. The kind of tone that makes you feel like you're being talked down to. Or a critical message. A text that starts with, "We need to talk." A comment that points out what you did wrong but ignores everything you did right. A sentence that feels sharp even if it's not technically rude. Or an unexpected problem. Your plans get ruined. Something breaks. Someone cancels. A bill shows up. A mistake happens at work and you have to deal with it right now. And before you even have time to fully understand what's happening, your body reacts. Your chest tightens. Your heart rate increases. Your shoulders rise without permission. Your breath gets shorter. Your jaw clenches like you're bracing for impact. And then your mind jumps in, not with calm logic, but with a story. A fast story. They don't respect me. They're blaming me. This always happens. I'm being attacked. I need to defend myself. I need to respond now. This isn't weakness. It's biology. Your brain is designed to protect you. That's its job. It doesn't care about your long-term peace. It doesn't care about your reputation tomorrow. It doesn't care about what you'll regret later. In a split second it asks one question. Am I safe? And here's the important part. Your brain doesn't wait for logic. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't gather evidence like a judge in a courtroom. It reacts. Because deep inside your mind is an ancient system built for survival. Back when danger meant something physical, something immediate, your life depended on fast reactions. If you hesitated, you didn't survive. So your brain developed a shortcut. See threat, react first, think later. That system is still inside you today. But today, most threats aren't physical. They're emotional. They're social. They're moments that hit your pride, your security, your sense of belonging, your sense of control. And your brain treats those moments like danger. Because to the nervous system, rejection can feel like a threat. Being disrespected can feel like danger. Uncertainty can feel like an emergency. So even if nothing is actually life-threatening, your body behaves like it is. Your brain thinks it's saving you. It's trying to keep you from being hurt again. It's trying to stop you from feeling embarrassed. It's trying to prevent you from being the one who gets walked over. So it activates the alarm. Fight, flight, freeze. You might fight with words, argue, attack, defend. You might flee, avoid, ghost, shut down. You might freeze, go silent, feel stuck, not know what to say. Different style, same route. Reaction. But here's the problem. Most modern threats are not life-threatening. That person's tone isn't going to end your life. That message won't harm you physically. That unexpected problem is stressful, yes, but not fatal. Yet your body reacts like they are. And that's where trouble begins. Because when your body goes into threat mode, your mind narrows. Your vision becomes tunnel vision. Emotionally, you stop seeing the full picture. You stop hearing what the other person actually meant. You stop thinking about consequences. You just want relief. You want to end the discomfort. And the fastest way the brain knows to end discomfort is to react. Send the text. Say the words. Raise the voice. Prove the point. Defend the ego. And in the moment it feels right. Feels like control. But later, the fog clears. Later you replay it in your mind. Why did I say that? Why did I react like that? I didn't even mean it. I made it worse. Because the truth is, reaction is not control. Reaction is the loss of control disguised as power. And the more you repeat it, the stronger the pattern becomes. Your brain learns. This is what we do when we feel threatened. So it reacts faster next time. And faster after that. Until one day you feel like your emotions are driving your life. Like people can push a button and instantly change your mood. Like one comment can steal your peace for hours. Like one problem can make you spiral. That's the cost. Not the event itself, but the automatic reaction that follows. And the first step to changing that isn't pretending you don't feel things. It isn't trying to be cold. It isn't forcing yourself to never get angry. The first step is understanding this. Your body's reaction is an alarm, not a command. Just because your heart is racing doesn't mean you must respond immediately. Just because your mind is shouting doesn't mean you must obey it. Just because you feel threatened doesn't mean you are in danger. This is where emotional control begins. Not by stopping feelings, but by creating a small space between feeling and action. Pause. A breath. A moment where logic finally arrives. Because once logic arrives, you regain something powerful. Choice. And choice is what gives you control over your emotions. That's how trouble ends. And that's how power begins. Every time you react emotionally, something important happens. It's not always obvious. It doesn't always look like a blow-up. Sometimes it's just a sigh, a sharp reply, a cold silence, a sudden change in your face. But inside, something bigger has shifted. You stop choosing, and you start responding. You move from being the author of your day to being a character in someone else's mood. And most people don't even notice when it happens. Because reaction is fast, automatic, familiar, feels like life. But it's not freedom. How it starts, a small trigger. It usually begins with something simple. A message that feels disrespectful. A comment that hits your insecurity. A tone that sounds like judgment. A look that you interpret as disapproval. Your body reacts before your mind has time to process. A tightness in your chest. Heat in your face. A rush in your thoughts. And in a split second, you're no longer present. You're pulled. Pulled into a story. Pulled into a defense. Pulled into a need to prove, to attack, to explain. And that's the moment choice starts to fade. When you stop choosing. Choice is quiet. It asks you to pause. It asks you to breathe. It asks you to consider. Reaction doesn't ask. Reaction takes over. It grabs the steering wheel of your mind and turns hard. And suddenly you're not asking, what's the best response? You're asking, how do I protect myself right now? How do I avoid feeling small? How do I win? How do I get control back? But the irony is, you're losing control in the process. Because when you react emotionally, you aren't leading yourself. You're being led. How other people begin to control your mood. Someone else's words control your mood. That's not exaggeration. Think about how quickly it happens. A single sentence can ruin your morning. A careless remark can make you doubt yourself for hours. A harsh tone can turn your calm into tension instantly. And the person who said it may move on in minutes. They might forget it completely. But you carry it. You replay it. You analyze it. You build an entire emotional storm around it. And now, without permission, your mood belongs to them. How behavior controls your energy. Someone else's behavior controls your energy. If they're angry, you feel on edge. If they're cold, you feel rejected. If they're rude, you feel the need to respond. You start adjusting your inner world based on their outer world. Even when you tell yourself you're fine, your energy shifts. You become tense. You become defensive. You become tired. Not from work. From emotional labor. From constantly reacting to things you didn't choose. How opinions control your day. Someone else's opinion controls your day. A judgment. A criticism. Even a glance that you interpret as disappointment. And suddenly, the day is no longer about what you want to do. It becomes about how you're seen. You begin performing. Explaining. Proving. You start living to correct someone else's perception. And deep down, something in you knows how exhausting that is. Because it's not living. It's managing. That's not freedom. That's not freedom. Freedom isn't being able to do what you want when you feel good. Freedom is being able to stay grounded even when the world tries to pull you. Freedom is having emotions but not being owned by them. Freedom is knowing you can feel anger without becoming it. Feel hurt without collapsing into it. Feel provoked without losing yourself. When you react emotionally, you may feel powerful for a moment. But it's not power. It's surrender. You're handing the keys to your emotional life to someone else. Emotional slavery, a hard truth. That's not freedom. That's emotional slavery. It sounds harsh, but it's real. Because what is slavery if not being controlled against your will? And emotional slavery looks like this. Someone else can shift your inner world with a few words. Someone else can steal your peace with a look. Someone else can decide your mood without even trying. And you tell yourself it's normal. But deep down you know it isn't. Because you weren't meant to live as a reaction machine. You weren't meant to be pulled by every noise. The loudest voice wins. The loudest voice wins. The angriest person controls the room. Think about how many times you've seen it. in families, in workplaces, in friendships. The person who yells becomes the center. The person who explodes gets attention. The person who reacts hardest sets the tone. Everyone else adjusts. People go quiet. People walk on eggshells. People shrink. Because intensity becomes authority. Not because it's right. Because it's overwhelming. And if you live in reaction, you become part of that system. Even if you hate it. How your peace becomes fragile. And slowly your peace becomes fragile. Not instantly. Gradually. Your calm becomes something you can lose easily. Your joy becomes something others can disturb. Your focus becomes something any comment can break. You begin to feel like peace is something you must protect constantly. Like a glass cup in a crowded room. One bump and it shatters. And living like that is exhausting. Because it means your stability depends on the outside world. And the outside world is unpredictable. The hidden cost, living on edge. When you're emotionally reactive, your body pays the price. Even if you don't notice it at first. You carry tension in your shoulders. You hold your breath without realizing. You feel tired even when you've done nothing physically demanding. Your mind becomes noisy. Always thinking. Always rehearsing. Always preparing for the next emotional hit. You become hyper-aware of people's tone. Their expressions. Their mood shifts. Not because you're sensitive. Because your peace is fragile and your mind is trying to protect it. But protection through reaction is a trap. Because it keeps you stuck in the same cycle. The space where freedom lives. Here's the truth. Between what happens and how you respond, there is a space. It might be small. Sometimes it's one breath. Sometimes it's 1 second. But that space is everything. Because reaction ignores that space. Choice lives in it. That space is where freedom is born. Freedom doesn't come from controlling people. It comes from controlling your response. And control doesn't mean suppression. It means awareness. What choosing looks like. Choosing doesn't mean you don't feel emotions. It means you feel them, without letting them drive. It means you can feel anger and still speak calmly. Feel disrespected and still stay grounded. Feel hurt and still choose dignity. It means you ask yourself, what's actually happening here? Is this worth my energy? Who do I want to be in this moment? That's choice. And choice is power. Why it feels hard at first. At first, this feels difficult. Because reaction is fast and familiar. Reaction is like a muscle you've used for years. Pausing feels unnatural. Silence feels uncomfortable. Not responding immediately can feel like weakness. But it's not weakness. It's discipline. It's emotional strength. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself. The quiet power of staying centered. There's a different kind of power that shows up when you stop reacting. It's quiet. It's not dramatic. It doesn't make you the loudest person in the room. But it makes you the most stable. And stability changes everything. When you stay centered, you stop feeding chaos. You stop escalating tension. You stop giving attention to energy that doesn't deserve it. You begin to move like someone who owns themselves. And people feel that. Not because you dominate. Because you don't bend easily. Rebuilding peace from the inside. Peace becomes strong when it comes from within. Not from people being kind. Not from situations going smoothly. Not from life being fair. Peace becomes strong when it is not dependent. When your calm doesn't require everyone to behave perfectly. When your mood doesn't collapse because someone is rude. When your day isn't ruined because someone disagrees with you. That's real peace. Not fragile peace. Rooted peace. A new way to live. Imagine waking up and being able to keep your energy. Not because nothing triggers you. But because triggers don't control you. You still feel emotions, but you don't get possessed by them. You stop giving strangers power over your inner world. You stop letting anger set the tone. You stop living like your peace is a fragile thing that can be stolen. You begin choosing. And the more you choose, the freer you become. So remember this. Every time you react emotionally, something important happens. You stop choosing. You start responding. Someone else's words control your mood. Someone else's behavior controls your energy. Someone else's opinion controls your day. That's not freedom. That's emotional slavery. The loudest voice wins. The angriest person controls the room. And slowly your peace becomes fragile. Unless you decide quietly, consistently, to take your power back. Not by becoming colder, but by becoming steadier. Not by reacting louder, but by choosing stronger. And in that choice, you don't just protect your peace. You rebuild it from the inside out. And in those moments, the body reacts before the mind can catch up. Your chest tightens. Your stomach drops. Your jaw clenches. Your hands feel restless. Your brain starts building a story in seconds. They don't respect me. I'm not good enough. I always get treated like this. I can't believe this is happening again. I have to defend myself. I have to fix this right now. That's the response, automatic, fast, and often fueled by emotion. It's a survival response, a protection response. It's your mind trying to keep you safe. But safety and control are not always the same thing. You've seen what happens when you skip the pause. You reply too quickly. You say something sharp. You make a decision while angry. You send the text you later wish you could unsend. You walk away from something important because you felt overwhelmed. And later, when the emotion settles, you feel it. That quiet regret. Not always huge. Sometimes it's small. But it sticks to you. Why did I react like that? Why did I let that moment control me? Why did I say it that way? You promise yourself you'll do better next time. But next time comes and your reaction is ready again, fast as ever. Because the default setting of most people is reaction. It's not because they're weak. It's because they're human. Life trains you to react. Notifications train you. Stress trains you. Being rushed trains you. The constant demand to respond, answer, defend, explain, it trains your nervous system to stay on edge. So your emotions learn to drive. And your mind becomes the passenger. Then one day something happens that makes you pause, literally. Maybe it's a moment you almost lose control. Maybe you feel yourself about to snap at someone you care about. Maybe you're on the edge of saying something that will create damage you can't undo. You feel that heat rise in your chest. Your tongue is ready. Your fingers are ready. Your pride is ready. And then, something inside you whispers, wait, just for 1 second. And that second feels longer than it should. Like time slows down. Like the world is holding its breath with you. That is the pause. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Because when you're emotional, the pause feels like weakness. It feels like hesitation. Like you're letting someone win. But that's a lie the ego tells. The pause isn't weakness. The pause is power. Because in the pause you breathe. Not a dramatic breath. Not a meditation session. Just a breath deep enough to interrupt the automatic reaction. You observe. You notice what's happening inside you, not what's happening outside. You notice the anger. You notice the anxiety. You notice the defensiveness. And for the first time, you don't become the emotion. You witness it. That's a huge shift. Because when you can observe an emotion, you can also choose what to do with it. You regain control. Not control over other people. Not control over the situation. Not control over life. Control over yourself. And that's the only control that actually matters. The pause creates a tiny space where you are no longer trapped inside the first response that shows up. It gives you room to ask a better question. Instead of asking, how do I respond? You ask, what response serves me? That question changes everything. Because, how do I respond? Often comes from emotion. It comes from wanting to be right. Wanting to be heard. Wanting to protect pride. Wanting to win. Wanting to punish. Wanting to prove something. It's reactive. But what response serves me is different. It comes from clarity. It asks, what helps me long term? What protects my peace? What keeps my self-respect intact? What aligns with the person I want to be? Sometimes the response that serves you is silence. Sometimes it's walking away. Sometimes it's choosing not to argue with someone who isn't listening anyway. Sometimes it's saying, I need a moment, instead of exploding. Sometimes it's waiting 10 minutes before replying to that message. Sometimes it's choosing a softer tone, even when you feel harsh inside. And yes, sometimes it's standing your ground. But even then it's done with control, not chaos. You start realizing that emotional reactions feel powerful in the moment, but they often make you feel powerless later. Because you handed your peace away. The pause lets you keep it. And it's not easy. Some days the pause is tiny. A half second. Barely enough time to breathe. But even that is progress. Other days you forget. You react. You regret. And that's human too. But then you come back to the practice. You start catching yourself earlier. You notice the signs sooner, the tension, the urge to prove, the impulse to snap. You build awareness the way you build strength. Repetition. And slowly your life starts changing in small, quiet ways. Arguments become shorter. Regret becomes less frequent. Your mind becomes calmer. Your relationships feel safer. You feel proud of how you handle pressure. Not because you never feel emotion, but because emotion doesn't own you anymore. That pause turns emotion into clarity. Because when you pause, you separate yourself from the storm long enough to see what's true. You realize, not every comment deserves a response. Not every problem needs panic. Not every feeling is a fact. Not every trigger requires a reaction. And once you see that, you start responding like someone in control. And clarity leads to power. Not the loud kind. Not the attention-seeking kind. The real kind. The kind that keeps you steady when someone else is chaotic. The kind that keeps you calm when life is loud. The kind that helps you choose your next move instead of being pushed into it. It's a quiet power. A grounded power. And it's built in moments most people skip. Between stimulus and response, there is a moment. Pause. That pause is everything. Because in that pause you breathe. You observe. You regain control. And over time that small pause becomes a new way of living. A way where you don't let emotions drive your life. A way where you choose responses that serve you. A way where clarity becomes your default. And with clarity, you don't just react to life. You lead it. When you don't react right away, there is a moment most people rush past. It happens right after something triggers you. A comment, a message, a look, a sudden thought. Your body reacts before your mind catches up. Your chest tightens. Your shoulders rise. Your jaw clenches. Your breath becomes shallow. And without realizing it, you're already preparing to react. For most of your life this felt normal. Automatic. You thought that was just how emotions worked. Something happens. You react. Then you deal with the consequences later. But what you didn't know was that in those moments your nervous system was taking over. Not because you're weak. Because it's trying to protect you. The body reacts before the mind. Your nervous system doesn't speak in words. It speaks in sensations. Tightness. Heat. Urgency. A sudden need to defend, explain, escape, or attack. When something feels threatening, emotionally or mentally, your body reacts as if danger is present. Even when there isn't any real danger. A tone of voice. A text without an emoji. A memory from the past. A feeling of being ignored. Your body doesn't care about logic in those moments. It cares about safety. And when safety feels threatened, reaction feels necessary. Immediate. Urgent. Why everything feels so intense. When you react immediately, your nervous system stays activated. Your heart rate increases. Your breathing becomes faster and shallower. Your thoughts race ahead of your awareness. In that state, everything feels personal. Every word feels sharp. Every situation feels like an attack. Every silence feels loaded. You're not seeing clearly. You're seeing through survival mode. And survival mode doesn't ask, is this true? It asks, am I safe? The cost of instant reaction. Instant reaction feels relieving in the moment. You say what you feel. You defend yourself. You release the tension. But afterward there's often regret. Not always dramatic regret. Subtle regret. You replay the moment in your head. You think of better responses. You wish you'd handled it differently. And slowly over time these moments add up. You feel emotionally drained. You feel misunderstood. You feel like life keeps throwing things at you faster than you can handle. But the truth is, your nervous system hasn't been given a chance to settle. The power of not reacting immediately. Then one day, maybe by accident, you don't react right away. Someone says something that normally would set you off. And instead of responding instantly, you pause. Just for a second. And something interesting happens. Your breathing slows. Not because you forced it, but because your body realized there was no immediate danger. Your shoulders drop slightly. Your jaw unclenches. Your heart rate begins to settle. That pause sends a powerful message to your nervous system. We are safe right now. The body begins to calm. When you don't react immediately, your nervous system shifts. Out of fight or flight. Into regulation. Your breath deepens. Your muscles soften. Your thoughts stop racing. You're no longer bracing for impact. You're present. And presence changes how everything feels. What moments ago felt overwhelming, now feels manageable. What felt urgent, now feels optional. Emotions lose their grip. Emotions don't disappear when you pause. But they lose intensity. Anger softens into information. Fear turns into awareness. Hurt becomes something you can hold without exploding. You're still feeling, but you're no longer drowning. And that's important. Because emotions aren't enemies. They're messages. But when you react immediately, the message gets lost in the noise. From attack to information. Here's one of the biggest shifts that happens in the pause. What felt like an attack starts to feel like information. Instead of thinking, they're disrespecting me, you begin to see, something is being communicated. Instead of, this is personal, you notice, this might not be about me at all. Tone becomes data. Words become signals. Silence becomes neutral instead of threatening. And suddenly the situation feels less heavy. Neutral doesn't mean weak. This is important. Neutral doesn't mean passive. Neutral doesn't mean you don't care. Neutral doesn't mean you let things slide that shouldn't. Neutral means you're not hijacked. It means you're choosing clarity over chaos. You can still respond. You can still set boundaries. You can still say no. But now you're doing it from steadiness, not emotion. Seeing clearly for the first time. Clarity doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives quietly. When your nervous system settles. Your thoughts organize themselves. Your perspective widens. Your mind stops rushing to conclusions. You start seeing options. Not just reaction. Options. Speak calmly. Ask a question. Wait before responding. Walk away. Respond later. Options create freedom. Why clear minds make better decisions. Decisions made in emotional intensity are usually short-sighted. They're designed to protect you right now. But decisions made from clarity consider the future. Your peace. Your relationships. Your values. When your mind is clear, you choose responses you don't regret. You speak with intention. You act with awareness. You protect yourself without burning bridges. And that builds self-trust. Practicing the pause. At first, the pause feels unnatural. You're used to reacting fast. Silence feels awkward. Waiting feels risky. But with practice, the pause becomes familiar. You start noticing the moment sooner. Before the words leave your mouth. Before your fingers type the message. Before your mood spirals. That awareness is a skill. And like any skill, it gets stronger the more you use it. You feel safer inside yourself. One of the quietest changes is this. You begin to feel safe inside yourself. Because you know that no matter what happens, you won't lose control. You won't betray your values in a burst of emotion. You won't say things you can't take back. You won't be dragged by every trigger. That safety is powerful. It creates confidence. It creates calm. It creates resilience. Life slows down, internally. Life doesn't actually slow down. But your experience of it does. Moments don't feel so sharp. Problems don't feel so urgent. People don't feel so threatening. You're no longer reacting to life. You're responding to it. And that difference is everything. This is emotional regulation. What you're practicing isn't suppression. It's regulation. You're allowing your nervous system to settle before you act. You're giving your emotions space to move without controlling you. You're choosing awareness over impulse. This is emotional maturity. And emotional maturity isn't about being calm all the time. It's about knowing how to return to calm. The world feels different. When you stop reacting immediately, the world feels less aggressive. Not because people changed. Because your perception did. You're not constantly on guard. You're not scanning for threats. You're not bracing for the next hit. You're grounded. And grounded people make grounded choices. Returning to the truth. When you don't react immediately, your nervous system relaxes. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts settle. Your emotions lose intensity. What felt like an attack becomes information. What felt personal becomes neutral. You start seeing clearly. And clear minds make better decisions. Quietly. Consistently. Powerfully. Not reacting is not weakness, it's mastery. 1. The moment everyone knows too well. There's a moment we all recognize. It happens fast. So fast you barely notice it at first. Someone says something that hits a nerve. A message pops up on your phone at the wrong time. A tone feels dismissive. A look feels disrespectful. Your chest tightens. Your jaw clenches. Your mind starts racing before you even understand why. You feel it instantly. That urge to react. To defend. To explain. To snap back. To prove your point right now. And for years we've been told that this reaction is honesty. That reacting quickly means being real. That holding back means you're weak, afraid, or avoiding something. But what if that isn't true? What if not reacting is something entirely different? 2. What not reacting actually means. Not reacting doesn't mean ignoring emotions. It doesn't mean pretending you're fine when you're not. It doesn't mean swallowing pain and calling it strength. It doesn't mean bottling things up until they explode later. That's not control. That's suppression. Not reacting means something far more powerful. It means responding intentionally instead of emotionally. It means allowing the feeling to exist, without letting it take the wheel. You still feel the anger. You still notice the disappointment. You still acknowledge the hurt. But instead of letting those emotions decide your next move, you decide. And that difference changes everything. 3. The old pattern we all learned. Most of us were never taught how to pause. We were taught how to react. If someone disrespects you, say something back. If someone criticizes you, defend yourself immediately. If something feels unfair, Raise your voice so you're heard. So we learn to live on edge. Always ready. Always alert. Always bracing for the next emotional hit. The problem is, when you live this way, your peace becomes fragile. Anyone can disturb it. Any comment can steal your focus. Any situation can pull you out of yourself. You stop choosing how you show up. You start responding on autopilot. And slowly, without realizing it, you give your power away. For the first time you pause. At some point, something changes. Maybe it's exhaustion. Maybe it's a moment you regret. Maybe it's realizing how much energy reacting has been costing you. So one day, when the trigger comes again, you pause. Just for a second. Your heart is still beating fast. Your thoughts are still loud. Your emotions are still real. But instead of reacting, you breathe. You don't speak right away. You don't send the message immediately. You don't let the impulse win. And that pause feels uncomfortable. Almost wrong. Because silence feels like losing, at first. 5. The misunderstanding about silence. Here's the truth most people miss. Silence is not weakness. Pausing is not fear. Not reacting does not mean you accept disrespect. It means you refuse to be controlled by it. You're not avoiding the issue. You're preparing to handle it better. You're choosing clarity over chaos, strength over impulse, control over momentary relief. And the more you practice this pause, the more you notice something surprising. Your emotions start to lose their grip. 6. When the nervous system settles. When you don't react immediately, your body responds. Your breathing slows. Your shoulders drop. Your thoughts begin to settle. What felt like an attack starts to look like information. What felt personal becomes neutral. What felt urgent becomes manageable. You begin to see the situation clearly, not through emotion but through awareness. And clear minds make better decisions. You start realizing that not every comment deserves a response. Not every situation needs escalation. Not every emotion needs expression in the moment it appears. Some emotions just need acknowledgement. 7. Speaking from strength, not impulse. Not reacting doesn't mean staying silent forever. You still speak. You still set boundaries. You still address issues. But now you do it from strength, not impulse. Your words are calmer. Your tone is steadier. Your message is clearer. You don't over-explain. You don't raise your voice. You don't chase validation. You say what needs to be said, without losing yourself in the process. And people feel the difference. Because calm confidence is louder than emotional noise. 8. The shift in power. Something subtle happens when you stop reacting emotionally. You stop handing control to the outside world. Someone else's words no longer decide your mood. Someone else's behavior no longer dictates your energy. Someone else's opinion no longer shapes your day. You become harder to shake, harder to provoke, harder to manipulate. Not because you don't feel, but because you feel without being ruled by it. And that's real strength. 9. The inner peace that follows. Life doesn't suddenly become perfect. People still test you. Situations still challenge you. Emotions still rise. But your inner world becomes quieter. You respond instead of react. You observe instead of explode. You choose instead of surrender. And with that choice comes peace. Not the kind that depends on others behaving well, but the kind that comes from self-mastery. A peace that stays with you. 10. The quiet confidence of control. Not reacting doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. Because the strongest people aren't the loudest in the room. They're the calmest, the clearest, the most grounded. They don't rush to prove themselves. They don't need instant wins. They don't fight every battle. They understand something most people don't. You don't need to react to everything to be strong. Sometimes the strongest move is restraint. And once you learn that, you're no longer at the mercy of your emotions. You're in control. The constant state of reaction. There was a time when everything felt like it needed a response. A message that sounded rude. A comment that felt dismissive. A look that seemed disrespectful. Each one triggered something immediate. A tightening in the jaw. A rush in the chest. Thoughts racing ahead, preparing arguments that might never even be spoken out loud. You'd replay conversations in your head while brushing your teeth. You'd argue with people who weren't even there while driving. You'd lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, rehashing moments that already passed. And the worst part? It felt normal. Everyone around you seemed to live the same way, reacting, venting, complaining, explaining. It almost felt wrong not to. If you didn't respond immediately, didn't defend yourself instantly, didn't prove your point right away, it felt like losing. So you reacted. Every time. And slowly, quietly, it drained you. The hidden cost of always responding. No one warns you about the energy cost of emotional reactions. They don't tell you that anger doesn't just disappear after it's expressed. It leaves residue. They don't tell you that stress doesn't just come from problems, it comes from how much attention you give them. They don't tell you that overthinking isn't harmless. It consumes mental space meant for clarity, creativity, and calm. You start noticing it in small ways. You snap at people you care about. You feel irritated by minor inconveniences. You lose patience faster than you used to. Even good moments feel shorter, like you can't fully enjoy them because part of your mind is still busy replaying something that annoyed you earlier. It's like carrying a phone with too many apps running in the background. The battery drains faster even when you're not actively using it. That's what constant reaction does to you. The moment you realize you're tired of being tired. The realization doesn't come dramatically. It comes quietly. Maybe it's one night when you sit alone, phone in hand, scrolling without interest, feeling empty instead of entertained. Maybe it's a moment when someone says something sharp and instead of anger you just feel tired. Not sad. Not hurt. Just tired. Tired of explaining yourself. Tired of proving your worth. Tired of carrying emotions that don't improve your life. That's when a question forms, not loudly but persistently. Why does everything need so much of me? And for the first time you don't rush to answer. The pause that changes everything. The next time something triggers you, you notice it. The familiar spark. The urge to respond. The instinct to defend. But instead of reacting, you pause. Not because you're afraid. Not because you don't care. But because something inside you wants to try a different way. The pause is uncomfortable at first. Your body is used to action. Your mind is trained to react. Silence feels unnatural. Like holding your breath underwater. But you stay with it. You breathe. And something surprising happens. The emotion doesn't grow, it softens. The urgency fades. The situation doesn't feel as powerful as it did seconds ago. For the first time you realize something important. Not every feeling needs to be expressed. Not every thought needs to be followed. Not every situation deserves your energy. Saving energy without losing yourself. Pausing doesn't mean suppressing emotions. You still feel anger. You still feel frustration. You still feel disappointment. But you're no longer letting them drive. Instead of exploding outward, you let them pass through. Like a wave that rises, peaks, and then recedes without destroying the shore. You start choosing when to speak instead of speaking whenever you feel something. And this choice changes everything. You notice you're less exhausted at the end of the day. Your mind feels quieter. Your reactions feel measured instead of automatic. You're not numb. You're not passive. You're intentional. Protecting your peace becomes a priority. With time, you start valuing your peace more than being right. You stop correcting every misunderstanding. You stop responding to every provocation. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Not out of bitterness, but out of self-respect. You realize something powerful. Your energy is limited, and where you spend it determines how your life feels. So you become selective. Some things still deserve your response. Clear boundaries, honest conversations, important relationships. But many things don't. A careless comment. A stranger's opinion. Someone else's bad mood. You let them pass. And instead of feeling weak, you feel lighter. The grounded version of you emerges. As reactions decrease, clarity increases. You start responding instead of reacting. Responses come from strength. Reactions come from impulse. Responses are calm. Reactions are rushed. You notice how grounded you feel in moments that used to shake you. Your breathing stays steady. Your thoughts stay organized. Your words carry weight instead of heat. People may notice the change. Some will respect it. Some will test it. Some will feel uncomfortable because they're used to controlling you through emotional triggers. But you don't explain the shift. You live it. When silence becomes power. There's a moment when you realize silence isn't empty. It's full. Full of self-control. Full of awareness. Full of strength. You learn that not responding immediately doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've chosen yourself. You're no longer leaking energy through constant emotional reactions. You're conserving it. Protecting it. Using it where it actually matters. And that changes how life feels. Days feel calmer. Decisions feel clearer. You feel present in your own life again. The freedom of letting things be. You begin to understand a simple truth. Most things don't need your emotional fuel. They pass on their own if you don't feed them. Arguments dissolve without participation. Negativity loses power without attention. Drama fades when you refuse to engage. You're no longer carrying emotional baggage that doesn't belong to you. And for the first time in a long time you feel free. Not because life is perfect, Not because people stopped being difficult, but because you stopped giving everything your energy. Ending where it all began, with energy. Every reaction costs energy. Now you understand that deeply. Anger drains you. Stress exhausts you. Overthinking steals focus. And when you react to everything, you're always tired. But when you pause instead, something changes. You save energy. You protect your peace. You stay grounded. You stop wasting emotional fuel on things that don't deserve it. And what you gain isn't silence or detachment. What you gain is control. Control over your emotions. Control over your energy. Control over your life. And that control feels like rest. The kind of rest that no amount of sleep ever gave you. Nothing builds confidence like emotional control. 1. The moment you stop proving yourself. Nothing builds confidence like emotional control. Not loud confidence. Not the kind that demands attention. Not the kind that needs validation. The real kind grows quietly. It starts the moment you realize something important. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. Not to the person who doubts you. Not to the one who underestimates you. Not even to the version of you that once felt small. For a long time, you thought confidence meant reacting fast, defending your position, explaining yourself, making sure people understood your intentions. You felt this invisible pressure to respond immediately, as if silence meant weakness, as if pausing meant you were losing. So you spoke when you were hurt. You argued when you felt misunderstood. You reacted when emotions were high. And afterward, you were always tired. Tired of explaining. Tired of replaying conversations in your head. Tired of wondering if you said too much, or not enough. But then something changed. You stopped chasing the last word. And in that silence you found something unexpected. 2. The power of not reacting. At first, not reacting felt uncomfortable. Almost unnatural. Your mind would rush in with thoughts like, say something. Defend yourself. Don't let them think they won. Your heart would beat faster. Your chest would tighten. Your body was ready for a fight, even when there wasn't one. But instead of reacting, you paused. Just for a moment. You took a breath. You let the words land without grabbing them. You allowed the emotion to rise and pass. And nothing terrible happened. The world didn't collapse. You didn't lose respect. You didn't disappear. What actually happened was quieter, but far more powerful. You stayed in control. You realized that not every comment deserved a response. Not every challenge required your energy. Not every opinion needed your explanation. Some things didn't deserve access to your emotional space. And for the first time you felt grounded. 3. Calm under pressure. Pressure has a way of revealing who we really are. When emotions run high, most people react automatically. They raise their voice. They interrupt. They try to dominate the moment. But you began doing something different. You stayed calm. Not because you didn't feel anything, but because you chose not to let feelings drive your behavior. In tense moments you slowed your breathing. You listened more than you spoke. You responded instead of reacting. And that calm changed everything. While others rushed, you observed. While others panicked, you stayed steady. While others lost control, you kept yours. People noticed. Not because you demanded attention, but because your presence felt different. There was strength in your silence. Clarity in your words. Confidence in your restraint. You didn't need to prove anything. Your calm spoke for you. For trusting yourself again. Something unexpected happens when you stop reacting emotionally. You start trusting yourself. You trust that you don't need instant approval. You trust that you don't need to explain every decision. You trust that you can handle discomfort without collapsing. Before, your confidence depended on external reactions. How people responded. What they said. Whether they agreed. Now it came from inside. You trusted your judgment. Your timing. Your inner voice. You knew when to speak, and when silence was stronger. You knew when to walk away, and when to stand firm. You knew that your worth didn't rise or fall with someone else's opinion. That trust changed the way you showed up. You walked differently. Slower. More grounded. You spoke differently. Clear. Measured. You lived differently. With intention. With self-respect. And the best part? You didn't feel the need to announce it. 5. Emotional control is not emotional suppression. This wasn't about ignoring emotions. It wasn't about pretending you didn't care. And it definitely wasn't about becoming cold. You still felt anger. You still felt disappointment. You still felt hurt. But now, emotions didn't control your actions. You allowed yourself to feel without letting feelings take the wheel. You gave yourself space to process instead of exploding. You chose timing over impulse. You chose clarity over chaos. When something bothered you, you addressed it calmly. When a boundary was crossed, you said it clearly. When a situation didn't align with your values, you stepped back. You didn't react, you responded. And that difference changed how people treated you. 6. How others begin to see you. People can feel emotional control. They may not be able to explain it, but they sense it immediately. They notice that you don't rush to defend yourself, that you don't get pulled into unnecessary drama, that you don't raise your voice to feel heard. Your presence feels steady, predictable in the best way, safe yet strong. Some people respect it, some people feel uncomfortable around it, and some try to test it, but you don't react to that either. Because you're no longer living for reactions, you're living with intention. You understand that calm confidence is rare, and rarity stands out without trying. 7. The shift inside you. The biggest change didn't happen outside. It happened inside. You stopped needing validation to feel secure. You stopped chasing approval to feel worthy. You stopped explaining yourself to people who weren't listening. Your mind felt quieter. Your body felt lighter. Your energy felt protected. You no longer replayed conversations endlessly. You no longer wished you'd said something different. You no longer felt drained by every interaction. You learned that peace is not passive. It's powerful. And emotional control is not weakness. It's mastery. It's confidence that doesn't shake. Life still challenged you. People still tested you. Situations still triggered emotions. But now, confidence didn't disappear under pressure. Because it wasn't built on ego. It wasn't built on winning arguments. It wasn't built on being right. It was built on self-control. You knew that losing control meant losing power. And keeping control meant staying grounded. You didn't need the last word. You didn't need to prove intelligence. You didn't need to show strength. You were strong. And strength didn't need permission. 9. When silence becomes strength. There were moments when silence said more than words ever could. When someone expected a reaction and didn't get one. When tension was met with calm. When disrespect was met with boundaries, not emotion. Silence wasn't surrender. It was choice. You chose where your energy went. You chose what deserved your attention. You chose peace over performance. And that choice shaped your confidence more than anything else ever had. 10. Calm confidence is rare and unforgettable. Nothing builds confidence like emotional control. Not because it impresses others, but because it changes how you see yourself. You stop doubting your strength. You stop fearing judgment. You stop living in reaction mode. You move with purpose. You speak with clarity. You live with calm certainty. And people notice, not because you demand it, but because calm confidence leaves an impression without effort. It's rare. It's powerful. And once you have it, you never go back. 1. The moment before the reaction. Usually starts small. A message. A comment. A look that feels off. You feel it before you think it. That quick tightening in the chest. The heat rising in your face. The urge to reply now, to explain, to defend, to prove something. That's where most people react. Instantly. Automatically. But this story isn't about reacting. It's about the moment before the reaction. That tiny space where a choice exists. Most of us don't notice it at first. Life moves fast. Emotions hit faster. And for a long time, you believe reactions are just who you are. That's my personality. That's how I'm built. I can't help it. But one day something shifts. Not because you suddenly become calm. Not because life gets easier. But because you get tired of feeling controlled by every emotion that passes through you. 2. Learning to pause. At first, the idea sounds simple. Almost too simple. Pause before replying. Breathe before responding. Wait before deciding when emotional. You read it somewhere. Or hear it in a video. And part of you agrees. It makes sense. Another part of you laughs. Yeah, right. Easy to say when you're not in my situation. So you don't change overnight. The first time you try to pause, you fail. Someone pushes your buttons and the words leave your mouth before your brain catches up. Later, you replay the moment in your head, wishing you'd handled it differently. You feel that familiar mix of regret and frustration. I knew better. Why did I react like that again? That's usually where people give up. They see failure as proof they can't change. But what if failure is part of the training? 3. The practice no one sees. This skill is built through practice. Not dramatic practice. Not life-changing speeches. Quiet, invisible practice. It looks like this. You read a message that annoys you. Your fingers hover over the screen. You feel the impulse to type something sharp. Instead you stop. Just for a second. You take one breath. Maybe two. Sometimes you still reply emotionally. Sometimes you don't. You're standing in a conversation and someone says something disrespectful. Your heart races. Your mind fills with comebacks. You pause. Your silence feels awkward. Your body wants release. Sometimes you speak anyway. Sometimes you choose your words carefully. None of this feels powerful in the moment. In fact, it often feels uncomfortable. Like holding a muscle in place when it wants to move. But something important is happening underneath. Each pause strengthens the habit. For failing without quitting. You will fail sometimes. That's normal. You'll have days where stress is high, sleep is low, patience is gone. On those days, reactions slip out easily. You snap. You overreact. You say things you didn't mean. The difference now is what happens after. Instead of judging yourself, you notice. I reacted there. I didn't pause. No excuses. No shame. Just awareness. Awareness is powerful because it turns mistakes into lessons instead of identities. Before, failure meant this is who I am. Now, failure means this is where I'm learning. And learning requires repetition. 5. The breath that buys you time. Breathing sounds too basic to matter. Everyone breathes. You've been breathing your whole life. But intentional breathing is different. When emotions rise, your body shifts into defense mode. Your breathing becomes shallow, fast, tight. Your nervous system prepares for a fight that might not even exist. When you pause and take a slow breath, you send a signal back to your body. I'm safe. I don't need to rush. That breath buys you time. Not a lot. Maybe 3 seconds. Maybe 5. But in those seconds, clarity starts to return. What felt like an attack becomes information. What felt personal starts to feel neutral. What felt urgent loses its power. You're no longer reacting from instinct. You're responding from choice. 6. The quiet wins. At first, the wins are small. You don't send the angry text. You walk away from a pointless argument. You choose silence instead of proving your point. No one claps for this. No one congratulates you. Sometimes people misunderstand your pause as weakness. Sometimes they push harder, expecting a reaction. That's when it gets difficult. But over time, something changes. You start noticing that situations don't drain you the way they used to. Your energy stays intact. Your mood doesn't swing as wildly. You recover faster when things go wrong. You realize you're no longer giving everyone else control over how you feel. That's a quiet win. A powerful one. 7. When calm becomes familiar. Repetition creates familiarity. The more you pause, the less strange it feels. What once required effort begins to feel natural. You still feel emotions. That never goes away. Anger still shows up. Stress still knocks on the door. But they don't take over the house anymore. You notice emotions rising sooner. You catch yourself faster. You choose better responses more often. Not perfectly, but consistently. Over time, calm becomes automatic. Not because you suppress feelings, but because you've trained your nervous system to slow down before acting. You've taught yourself that urgency is often an illusion. 8. The new confidence. Something unexpected happens when you stop reacting. Your confidence changes. Not loud confidence. Not performative confidence. A grounded, steady confidence. You trust yourself more. You know you don't have to say everything you think. You don't have to win every moment. You don't have to explain yourself to everyone. That trust shows in how you walk into rooms. How you speak. How you listen. People notice it even if they can't explain why. There's strength in restraint. Power in patience. Control in calm. 9. Choosing the long game. This skill doesn't develop in 1 week. Or 1 month. It's a long game. Some days you'll feel proud of how you handled things. Other days you'll feel like you're starting from zero. That's part of growth. The goal isn't to never react. The goal is to react less and respond more. To build space between emotion and action. That space is where wisdom lives. 10. The habit that shapes a life. Pause before replying. Breathe before responding. Wait before deciding when emotional. These aren't just techniques. They're habits that shape how you live. Each pause strengthens the habit. Each breath reminds you of your control. Each wait proves you don't have to rush. Over time, calm becomes automatic. And when calm becomes automatic, your life feels different. Lighter. Clearer. More intentional. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You can't control the world, but you can control yourself. 1. The moment everything feels out of your hands. There comes a moment in everyone's life when it hits you all at once. The message you didn't expect. The tone that feels disrespectful. The situation that spins out of control before you even understand what's happening. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts race. Your mind starts replaying words you haven't even spoken yet. You want to react. You want to explain yourself, defend yourself, prove your point, because deep down it feels unfair. It feels personal. It feels like if you don't respond right now, you'll lose something important, your dignity, your power, your voice. But here's the truth no one teaches us early enough. You can't control people. You can't control situations. And fighting that reality is what exhausts you the most. 2. The illusion of control. Most of us grow up believing that control means action. If someone disrespects you, you respond immediately. If something goes wrong, you fix it instantly. If someone misunderstands you, you explain harder, louder, faster. We think reacting proves strength. But what it really does is give control away. Because when your emotions react automatically, something subtle happens. You stop choosing. Someone else's words decide your mood. Someone else's behavior controls your energy. Someone else's opinion shapes your entire day. You may feel powerful in the moment, but afterward, you're drained. You replay the conversation in your head. You think of better responses too late. You wonder why you even cared so much. And slowly, your peace becomes fragile, easily shaken by anything outside of you. 3. The pause that changes everything. There is a small space most people ignore. It sits between what happens and how you respond. It's the pause. That brief moment where you could react, or you could breathe. At first, that pause feels uncomfortable, almost unnatural. Your body wants release. Your mind wants expression. Your ego wants to be heard. But if you stay in that pause just a little longer, something powerful happens. Your breathing slows. Your thoughts settle. Your emotions lose their sharp edge. What felt like an attack becomes information. What felt personal starts to feel neutral. What felt urgent suddenly doesn't anymore. And in that space you regain control. 4. Not reacting isn't weakness. Let's clear something up. Not reacting doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're scared. It doesn't mean you're letting people walk over you. It means you're strong enough to choose your response instead of being hijacked by emotion. You still speak. You still set boundaries. You still address issues. But you do it from clarity, not impulse. From strength, not anger. Silence isn't losing. Pausing isn't surrender. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to be controlled. 5. When you stop feeding every fire. Every reaction costs energy. Anger drains you. Stress exhausts you. Overthinking steals focus. When you react to everything, you're always tired. Emotionally, mentally, even physically. But when you stop reacting to things that don't deserve your energy, something changes. You save strength. You protect your peace. You stay grounded. You realize not every comment needs a reply. Not every opinion needs correction. Not every situation deserves your emotional fuel. And once you understand that, your life gets quieter, in the best way possible. 6. The shift from reaction to response. There's a difference between reacting and responding. Reaction is instant. Response is intentional. Reaction comes from fear. Response comes from confidence. When you respond instead of react, you begin asking different questions. Does this matter tomorrow? Is this worth my peace? Am I responding from emotion or from clarity? And slowly, you stop being pulled into chaos that was never yours to carry. You stop explaining yourself to people who don't want to understand. You stop defending your worth to those who've already decided your value. You stop arguing with situations that don't change no matter how loud you get. That's when control quietly returns to you. 7. Confidence grows in silence. Nothing builds confidence like emotional control. When you realize you don't need to prove yourself, when you don't need the last word, when you stay calm under pressure, you start trusting yourself. That trust changes how you walk, how you speak, how you show up in the world. People notice it, even if they can't explain it. Calm confidence is rare. And when someone carries it, it's felt immediately. Not because they're loud, not because they dominate, but because they're unshakable. Life becomes lighter. When you stop reacting to everything, life feels different. You wake up less tense. You sleep better. Your mind feels clearer. Problems don't disappear, but they stop overwhelming you. You handle situations with patience. You choose your battles wisely. You let go faster. And most importantly, you stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours in the first place. You realize that peace isn't found in controlling the world. It's found in controlling yourself. 9. The quiet power of emotional mastery. Most people think power looks aggressive. Raised voices, strong opinions, instant reactions. But real power is calm. It's the ability to sit with discomfort without exploding. The ability to hear criticism without collapsing. The ability to face uncertainty without panicking. When you control your emotions, you control your decisions. When you control your decisions, you control your direction. When you control your direction, you control your life. Not overnight, not perfectly, but consistently. Each pause strengthens the habit. Each calm response rewires your nervous system. Over time, control becomes automatic. 10. The final truth. You can't control people. You can't control situations. But you can control your response. And that changes everything. Not reacting doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. Because when you control your emotions, you control your life. And once you experience that kind of control, you never want to give it away again. You can't control people. You can't control situations. But you can control your response. And that changes everything. Not reacting doesn't make you passive. It makes you powerful. Because when you control your emotions, you control your life. The next time life pushes your buttons, remember this moment. Pause, breathe, choose. Because the moment you stop reacting is the moment you take your power back.